and welcome. Today on the 7th lecture, 7th week and first lecture, let us today discuss about the new topic on nature based solution. Friends, you must have heard from here and there is a term called nature based solution. As it is indicative, you can very well understand that this is some solution which is perhaps in coherence with nature. Perhaps it is a green solution for the cause of the nature, or which is for nature and by nature kind of thing. So, to understand this, let us talk about these concepts. What is nature based solutions, particularly the framework, and in terms of the concept, what are the concepts linked to that in terms of an umbrella concept, and the various principles and approaches that are involved in this. And then we will have a kind of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders as far as the nature based solution is concerned, and then need in terms of mitigation for nature based solution, and what are the revenue mechanisms. Here we will discuss about the various solutions. As you can see from the left hand side diagram, we have 5 different terminologies mentioned. First one starts with R, that is restoration. Second one is with respect to various issue specific. Third is infrastructure. Fourth is management, and fifth is protection. So, these all fall under the ecosystem based approaches, whereas at the bottom if you see, we have human well-being and biodiversity benefit, and within that it shows that yes, it is also having societal challenges. So, according to the IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, the nature based solution, that means this NBS, which is abbreviated as, the nature based solutions are the various actions that are taken to protect, sustainably manage and adapt, and simultaneously benefiting the people and the nature. So, that is how it restores, or through the nature based solution we restore natural and modified ecosystems that address societal challenges. So, it is a very effective method to address the societal challenges based on the sustainable management principle, based on adaptation principle, and also co-benefiting both nature and people. So, nature benefit is there, so that is why it is a nature based solution. So, the overall goal of nature based solutions, or NBS, are they are intended to support the achievement of the society's development goals and safeguard human well-being in ways that reflect cultural and societal values, and also enhance the resilience of ecosystems, their capacity for renewal and provision of services. This particular concept has been taken by Cohen and Shacham, which is published in 2016, and also have been mentioned at the end in terms of the references. Going ahead in terms of the concepts, on the left hand side we will look at the various categories of nature based solutions in terms of the approaches. We have ecosystem restoration approaches, we have issue specific ecosystem related approaches, we have infrastructure related approaches, the one we mentioned there in the previous diagram, and ecosystem based management approaches and ecosystem protection approaches. So, let us take a few examples. So, ecological restoration, in terms of ecological restoration, we also use some engineering, or you say ecological engineering kind of stuffs that helps in terms of forest landscape restoration. So, all these things, ecological restoration, ecological engineering, and forest landscape restoration, they fall under this category of the nature based solution approaches. Coming to the next one is issue specific ecosystem related approaches. So, ecosystem based adaptation, ecosystem based mitigation, climate adaptation services, ecosystem based disaster reduction. So, these are 5 very different issue specific ecosystem related approaches. So, the first one is ecosystem based adaptation. So, it varies from one ecosystem to other ecosystem, because the nature of one ecosystem is unique or different from than that of another ecosystem. So, the adaptation measures has to be ecosystem specific, and also the mitigation measures also has to be ecosystem specific. Then the climate adaptation services, the services which are at which addresses to the climate are also the adaptation services which addresses to the climate concern are also fall under the issue specific ecosystem related approaches. Then ecosystem based disaster risk reduction. So, various ecosystem, mangroves being at the coast, deserts being at the dry regions, and similarly the high biomass regions, so are respectively prone to cyclones, to drought, and also to fires. So, that means there are various issues which are specific to those ecosystems. So, issue specific nature based solutions are need to be adopted. Then coming to the infrastructure related approaches. So, it can be natural, or you say the green infrastructure. So, whatever infrastructure we bring out, it should not be a construction or a kind of civil infrastructure. So, that what will happen, that does not go with the nature. So, any infrastructure we should try our best to put it as much as natural or as much as green as possible, so that it will adapt the adaptation or the convergence as far as the nature based approaches is better and is suitable. Coming to the fourth one, ecosystem based management approaches. So, ICZM, that means integrated coastal zone management and integrated water resources management. So, coastal and water resources management are some kind of means two examples. They should be taken separately as far as the whole management aspect is concerned, because they are unique systems and also unique theme or thematic. So, coastal unique system, water has a unique theme. So, ecosystem protection approaches, area based conservation approaches, including the protected area management. So, as far as we move on in terms of the protection based approaches, so various area based conservation approaches which are suitable to different protected areas, and their management need to be adopted. So, what we try to understand here, that there exist various categories of nature based solutions or the nature based solution approaches that needs to be adopted, because the ecosystems are unique in themselves, and for various themes also it has to be taken up separately or uniquely. Coming to the principles and approaches as far as the core principles are concerned. So, work with nature. So, first the core point as far as the NBS is that we need to work with nature, and the second is need to conserve the biodiversity. So, it cannot happen at the cost of biodiversity. So, with nature, conservation of biodiversity, and third, thereby you improve the ecosystem services, the services an ecosystem offers in terms of carbon services, in terms of oxygen services, in terms of water services, in terms of many other services. You said the provisional, the regulatory, all these fall under this. So, based on this the principles and approaches are framed. So, that makes the core as far as the nature based solution is concerned. So, spectrum of approaches, continuous interaction between society and nature. So, nature and society has to live in harmony. Human modified systems with natural elements. So, whatever the system which is modified by the humans, that has to be by the natural elements. It cannot be by foreign or aligned, or I am sorry, as a non-aligned material, plastic, constructed material. These are all the non-aligned. These are not the natural elements. So whatever modifications done by human being has to be as far as possible with respect to the natural elements utilization. Then fully natural and minimally altered ecosystems. So the ecosystem has to be as much as possible fully natural, and there has to be very minimum alterations as far as the ecosystem level alteration is concerned. In this now let us move on to various types of ecosystems. First, let us talk about about an original ecosystem. Then we will move on to degraded ecosystems and how the degraded is again restored back using a nature based solution approach. And on the right hand side you can see some kind of schematic diagram mentioned here in terms of original, degraded and restored conditions of an ecosystem. This you can see it is a kind of estuary ecosystem, and the upper one as far as the original condition is concerned, it is you see healthy forest and wetland ecosystems near a coastal watershed. So mangroves and wetlands naturally absorb storm surges. So in this kind of system, when you have a coastal watershed, lot of mangroves, wetlands. So because of the presence of mangroves and wetlands, the storm surges are naturally absorbed, and also the flood, there is reduction in flood because lot of means because of the presence of these wetlands and mangroves, there will be reduction in terms of the floods, and they contribute. That is why we say that they are in harmony and they are in a kind of original state. But if there has to be some intervention has to be required, so then what we can do, this particular protected area is, means this particular area can be taken under a protected area, and that may lead to conservation of whatever the rare, threatened, endangered or all these kind of IUCN categories of species are there. So this is a kind of original condition in terms of the top figure as far as the depiction goes. Coming to the second one or the middle one, that talks about the degraded. If you compare with the upper and middle one, you will see lot of areas there have been deforestation and there have been damage to the wetland. So that means wetland degradation has happened, and expansion of settlement also has increased, and that has led to a kind of pressure, that has given to a pressure as far as the environment or the to the environment is concerned. Then flood risk rises. So the moment you take off the green material, the vegetation material, and modify it with lot of what you say human settlement and other non-natural elements, then what happens? We are incorporating grey infrastructure. So grey infrastructure alone cannot save or cannot what you say arrest the flood or cannot control the flood. So what we argue here is that we need to understand this, and we need to replace as much as possible with the natural what you say natural elements that talk to the nature, not the grey infrastructure. So in this condition, what will happen as far as the restoration condition is concerned? Watershed restoration through forest, mangrove and wetland rehabilitation will reconnect. So go back to the first one or the top slide. So top figure. So the moment we put or restore the forest what has been deforested, the mangroves which was again deforested, the wetland which was already have been disturbed, it has, if it is again rehabilitated, then it will reconnect the protected areas and also the wider landscape. So that means it will combine the nature based solutions with conventional infrastructure, for example flood walls, to reduce the flood risk. So the restored ecosystems is in the principle of nature based solutions. Coming to various categorization of nature based solutions. So This particular connected diagram has taken from a publication by Gupta in Dubai. You can see it here. On top we have the nature based solution, then it got two division. As far as the left one is concerned, ecosystem based ecosystem based mitigation, and on the right hand side ecosystem based adaptation and joint mitigation and adaptation. So, that is why three parts. First part ecosystem based mitigation, second one is ecosystem based adaptation, and the third part is a joint both mitigation and adaptation. So, let us first know what do we mean by the ecosystem based mitigation. So, as far as the ecosystem based mitigation is concerned, we have energy, waste, agriculture, forestry and other land use. So, as far as energy is concerned, direct use of renewable energy source, for example biomass, replacing the energy incentive building material with bamboo. Coming to the second one is waste. Waste in terms of algae based waste, in terms of algae based waste water treatment. Agriculture, organic farming and organic manure, and forestry and other land uses, assisted natural regeneration and assisted reforestation. So, in terms of energy, waste, agriculture and forest and other land uses, as far as the mitigation is concerned, what we discussed that in terms of energy we can have the direct use of renewable energy from various sources such as biomass. In terms of replacing the energy, so a lot of intensive building material with bamboo. So, bamboo is a nature based material, so we can go for that in terms of energy. Coming to waste, algae based waste treatment can also be thought of. Coming to agriculture, both organic farming and organic manure usage and utilization should be done. In terms of the forestry and other land uses, assisted natural generation and afforestation and reforestation. So, coming to ecosystem based adaptation, glaciers gathering the glacier and grafting ice strips or ice stupas, and water efficient technologies, the artificial recharge and removal of harvesting, promoting traditional crop varieties, forest conservations that enhance the non timber forest produces, and mangroves, particularly plantations in terms of coastal regeneration of wetlands. So, these are the ecosystem based adaptation. The previous one is mitigation, this one are the adaptation. Now, let us have a look at what are the joint mitigation adaptation, because that is going to finally give us the maximum or optimal benefit as far as the nature based solution is concerned. So, red plus reduce emission from deforestation degradation, where we see plus, that means it is always a plus because we conserve or energy or emission is reduced, and carbon it leads towards a carbon sink. Then conservation and the sustainable management of forest, afforestation, reforestation with native species. So, look at this, how both mitigation and adaptation are joined together. Wetland management can be done together, sustainable conservation of agriculture, and also restoration of the coral reefs. Now, friends, let us talk about the nature based solutions with stakeholders. We have 8 principles. So, there are 8 principles of nature based solutions that illustrate the need to take a holistic approach, where nature based solution must transform societal changes into outputs benefiting both human well-being and biodiversity simultaneously. So, look at the diagram which is given on the left hand side. The first one, the inner circle talks about the societal challenge, the second one talks about the design upscale, the third one talks about the biodiversity and the net gain, and then the outer the other two in that circle talks about economic the economic viability, and the fifth one in the same circle talks about inclusive governance, and then the sixth one on upper side talks about a kind of trade off. So, how the trade off acts, and the seventh one is in terms of the adaptive management, and the eighth one is mainstreaming and sustainability. These are the various stakeholders of nature based solutions. So, first one we can just go one by one again. The first one is addressing the societal challenges, is the first core of the NBS nature based solutions, and it makes the first stakeholder. The second is landscape scale of intervention. So, whatever you do it at a smaller or a different scale, it has to have an implication at a larger scale at a landscape level, and the biodiversity conservation and gain also has to be there, and it has to be viable with economic or what you say, it should give benefits to the local people in principle of nature based solutions. And in terms of governance, yes, there has to be capability in terms of governance, but equitably the balance needs to be trade off, and adaptive management and they all need to be mainstreamed within an appropriate jurisdictional context. So, these have been taken by from the report UNEP 2023 publications. Now, what are the role of different market mechanisms? Friends, we understand that all this has to have a linkage or a mechanisms that involves the market. So, coming to this, we have the red plus, we all know, and in terms of this, let us see the rising demand for ecosystem protection and addition of the plus. Plus means it is a gain as far as the withdrawal of carbon dioxide from atmosphere or a kind of sink because of this, and reduction in emission. So, the addition of plus in the red stands for reduced emission coming from deforestation and degradation, or you say forest degradation. This made it clear that mindlessly targeting to remove emissions by creating carbon sinks will not solve the problem of the climate change. So, what we need? We need a more robust approach combining the mitigation and adaptation both together. So, previous slide we discussed that means in singleton the adaptation and mitigation may not achieve the optimal target in terms of nature based solution. So, we need a kind of joint. So, climate mitigation adaptation, livelihood and other social benefits, biodiversity conservation and sustainability, they have to go together in terms so as to realize maximum benefits. So, nature based solutions are inspired and supported by nature and are cost effective, and simultaneously they provide both environmental, socio-economic benefits, thereby they build the resilience. So, it contributes towards the resilience building. And now, in terms of the need, what is the need in terms of the nature based solutions and the mitigation, and the diagram if you see on the x axis the annual mitigation potential in terms of the gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent which is getting fixed or getting minimized because of this. So, nature contributes over 125 trillion of USD per annum to the global economy through various ecosystem services. This is reported by UNEP FI published in 2023. So, the various businesses, financial institutions and governments, they are increasingly recognizing that nature based solutions are imperative. They are imperative for addressing these risks and also far reaching net zero commitment. So, as all of us know, this is regarded or this is needed in terms of reaching the net zero commitments as well as being an essential component for human existence and good quality of life. Moving on to the scaling. So, as far as the scaling of nature based solutions through finance is concerned, by rapidly doubling the financial flows. So, financial flow has to be there, so that the maximum NBS benefits should be realized. So, if we double the financial flows to NBS, we have the potential to halt biodiversity loss. We can stop the biodiversity loss if we doubly flow the financial benefit to the nature based solution. So, we can halt the biodiversity loss, we can reduce the emissions by 5 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year by 2025, which is already gone because this report is little past, published in 2023, but it can be slightly more as we have already moved beyond. Now we are in 2026. So, further rising to 15 gigatons. So, 5 gigatons to 15 gigatons per year if by 2050. So, look at the potential. If we doubly flow our finance to NBS sector, then by 2015 it will contribute in terms of rising to 15 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year. So, in a sense it will help towards achieving our 1.5 degree centigrade target or scenario target, and it will restore close to 1 billion hectare of degraded land. So, coming to the left hand side figure, if you see the current 2025, 2030, 2050 and total scenarios, the trajectories of nature based solutions, the annual nature based solution investment needed to limit climate change below 1.5 degree, halt biodiversity loss and achieve land degradation neutrally. So, on y axis we can see the figure going from 0 to 700, and here we can understand that how much in terms of the flow, the financial flow is required. It is if we double it, then we will achieve it faster. And coming to the various revenue generation mechanisms. So, on left hand side we have the mechanisms, and on the right hand side we have the descriptions. User charges. Users of an ecosystem are charged a fee. So, if we charge a fee for the users of various ecosystem, then perhaps that money can be transferred in terms of the financing or the private financing as far as the nature based solution is concerned. The tax, if we levy a lower tax in terms of various services and payments that are utilized in NBS, it will help. The subsidies, various private financiers, they receive subsidies for investing in nature based solutions. So, if we give some subsidies, then more of the private financiers will be interested in investing in the nature based solutions. Coming to the fourth, the tax rebates. Yes, it is in the similar lineup as far as means in terms of subsidy, in terms of tax rebates. If it is given to the financiers or the private players, then it can still go better. Coming to the credit trading systems, the credits, particularly carbon credits, are generated for protecting or restoring nature and can then be sold. So, this credit what is generated from by the activities or NBS activities to restore the nature. So, this can be sold in market, and that revenue can again go in terms of the developing nature based solutions. And then coming to biodiversity offsets. Yes, entities that are looking to compensate their own impact on biodiversity can invest in NBS that improve biodiversity elsewhere to offset their impact. If you have no other option and removing some biodiversity from your space here at place A, then you have the option of conserving that elsewhere in place B. So, these kind of offset biodiversity offsets also should be encouraged and entertained. Coming to carbon offsets, entities that are looking to compensate their carbon emissions can invest in nature based solutions that function as carbon sinks to offset their impact. So, this is very important because as far as the compensation is concerned, coming from the carbon emission, it is a very good idea. Now, finally, the payment for various ecosystem services. So, users of ecosystem services that are generated by this nature based solution should pay for, and that payment should go towards the conservation or the ecosystem improvement in nature based solution. For example, fishermen pay for catching fish in mangrove forest. So, what we try to argue or what we try to advocate here is that yes, there has to be have various mechanisms for revenue generation. So, from various NBS activities, restoration activities through various ecosystem services provisioning activities, and then that money, that revenue should go in terms of getting invested there itself. So, as we discussed, nature based solutions for water, food, human health and climate change. So, these four, particularly water, food, human and climate change, form the core as far as various challenges are concerned. Various challenges are faced by as far as the societal challenges are faced in terms of the nature based solutions and need to be addressed properly. These 5 references has been used here for preparation of the slides and for today's discussion. And coming to the conclusion, the nature based solutions integrate ecosystem protection with sustainable development to enhance biodiversity, human well-being and long-term resilience. Nature-based solutions operate along a spectrum of human-nature interactions, working with nature to conserve biodiversity and enhance the ecosystem services. Nature-based solutions are essential for sustaining the global economy, managing climate and nature-related risks, and supporting long-term human well-being. Thank you very much for attending this lecture.